Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our Trailblazers webinar today. My name is Cheryl O'Connor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Income Conductor, an innovative and award-winning retirement income planning technology. Joining me today is my co-host, Mark Butler, a consultant to wealth management and wealth tech firms and founder of Wealth Management GPT. So happy New Year, Mark.
Happy New Year, Cheryl. Thanks for having me again, and greetings from snowy Pennsylvania on a January morning.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that same position in the country. So we're all snuggled and let's stay warm during the webinar. And just to set the stage for those of you attending your first Trailblazer webinar, this series highlights the people in our industry who are forging new paths and developing new ways to achieve success while providing great outcomes for their clients. We welcome your questions, so please feel free to type them into the Q&A box, and we'll leave time at the end to address them. So our trailblazer today is Kathi Balasek. Kathi has been a coach, consultant, speaker, university lecturer, and widow advocate for over 25 years. Kathi is not only a professor in the Department of Kinesiology at California State University at Chico, she founded and leads Grief Smart Advisor, a firm which provides training to financial service professionals on grief literacy and empathy communication. I've had the great pleasure of knowing Kathi for a few years now and co-presenting with her at a Shift conference on how advisors can best plan for widowhood and retirement and support women before, during, and after the loss of their spouse. Welcome, Kathi.
Thank you, Cheryl and Mark. It is such a privilege to be here.
Oh, so glad to have you on. Maybe you could share with everyone how a professor of phys ed came to found a firm that focuses on grief literacy for financial professionals.
Okay, so yes, I am the anomaly. I have been a PE teacher and educator for, over 2 decades. And I think my first love was basketball, and my second love was teaching. And so I've always been interested in best practices of pedagogy, which is teaching and the art of connecting and communicating. And my path went a very different direction that I had planned years ago. In my 30s, I went from soccer mom to caregiver to widow. And my husband had a brain tumor, and I was faced with raising 5 children on my own. And so I kept teaching, and I've raised kids. And the one thing I knew I wanted to do at some point was to use my experience and my education to play it forward. Okay, I'm a lover of sports games and play. And so you'll always hear a ton of analogies because that's how my brain thinks. It's very tactical, strategic, as in a game. But I learned that widowhood is financial. And every decision that I have made and continue to make has had a financial component. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking at ways I could package my experience and my education. And so I went into the research, and I started seeing which institutions, companies, etc., needed something in that area of grief and loss. And I came across a few statistics, and we've all heard them. 80% of widows leave their financial advisor within the first year. So wherever there's a gap, there's an opportunity. And so I knew that I wanted to dive deeper there. And I had a wonderful financial advisor. I couldn't have gone forward without him. And he did so many things that propelled me forward. And I thought, this is an area that I can help, I can serve. And it is such a joy to share this and teach grief literacy to advisors, because this is a life skill. You know, we were never taught the language of loss. We have this universal experience of loss and grief, but we don't have a universal language around it. So I knew with my background, I could create a curriculum and get in front of people. And I've been so grateful to get in front of people like you and Mark and other leaders in this industry that deem this as valuable. So that's sort of where it started. And then as I dug deeper into widowhood, it started to start with widowhood. And then I learned a bunch about other losses, other grief, and how literacy skills can really be applied. Because the reality is today's client is tomorrow's widow. Mm-hmm. You know, when 80% of men die married, the average age of widowhood is 59. You will have the longest client relationship with a woman, and most likely they have been widowed at some point in their journey. So I started looking at ways that companies, advisors can serve widows best. And widowhood is a gender neutral term, but men and women outnumber men 4-1. So it was important to learn about them. And the number one reason why they leave their advisor is communication, not being able to connect on an emotional or personal level.
Yeah. So, I mean, you and I have talked a lot about this because we focus, obviously, our technology focuses on retirement planning and management. So many of our advisors' clients are very near or in retirement, where, you know, longevity and planning for that widow is very, very important. No two people, you know, die on the same day unless they're in some sort of catastrophic crash, nor do they die on their birthdays at the same age. So we really need to look at, you know, longevity and the situation around a surviving spouse. It's so important. So you talk about having a grief literate culture and building a brand of compassion. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So we live in a grief illiterate society. You know, it almost seems disrespectful to talk about it, and we're awkward. We don't do it well. And so we avoid it because we weren't ever taught. And so grief literacy is normalizing the conversations and responses towards loss and grief. And, you know, in fact, New York Life did a study on grievers after COVID, and it said 71% of people want to have these conversations. And so advisors, you're on the front lines of very bad news. And rather than waiting till those things happen, you can front load a lot of these things and prepare and brand compassion. Because what I mean by branding compassion is becoming known for working with people who are going through life transitions and difficult ones. Have it in your marketing, setting up and curating resources, referrals. You know, one thing that a lot of people don't understand is when death happens, you don't feel safe anymore. You don't know who to ask for anything. You get taken advantage of. So you can set up some of these curated resources or community referrals. Because when I was widowed, I became a big fat fibber. When somebody came to my house, I just pretended my husband was there because I didn't feel safe with a service person coming to my home. I didn't know how to buy a car. I just bought it because I liked the name. it was the color cashmere, and I said sold. I had no clue on how to do those things or who to ask. And you can set up these resources. I work a lot with advisors to brand compassion, to really rework their bio. Like, how would I know just reading your bio that you do this? You're known for it. You're the go-to person. Have you ever met somebody who they know everybody? They're dialed in. Wouldn't it be great if your clients felt like you were that go-to person as an advisor? I'm going to ask them. They'll either know, they'll have a resource, and we could gather grief resources, online services. We could grab community referrals. We could have a dream team of professionals, that we would recommend to somebody. I was 39 when I was widowed, and I was recommended to an estate attorney that was 1 year from retiring. That's not what we mean by tailoring. And a part of that too is in all of your messaging, whether it's emails, whether it's a blog, whether it's your education format, becoming known for talking about some of these conversations. There's two types of conversations we like to have when you're an advisor. Buying a home, getting married, sending kids to college. Well, then there's this other side of caregiving, divorce, long-term care, all of these awful things. And if we leave something out of the story, people don't trust us. And when you have these conversations up front, often you get women to the table early.
Mm-hmm.
They start to know, oh, I'll ask them. It almost gives you permission to talk about these concepts in a meeting. It gives you permission to say and give resources. This is how you talk and start a conversation at home with your family. Because whether they ask you, when you say, does anybody have any questions? That doesn't work. You need to be the question person.
Right. And chances are they're going to have this in their mind anyway, right?
Yes.
So.
Yes.
In Kathi, I think some of this, as I was getting ready for our session, I started to think, well, every married couple is faced with widowhood. Because like Cheryl said, unless there's some catastrophic accident, people aren't dying on the same day or dying on their birthday. And so that just really struck me. I had never thought of it that way before. And you're right, it's not, I know we talk about women as widows, but, men can be widows too. And so it is gender neutral. But every couple is going to face it. One person is going to die before the other person. And I hadn't thought about it that way prior to spending some time with you. And so, I love what you just said a few minutes ago about, advisors and being able to have these conversations that are awkward, and are tough conversations to have. We're talking about planning for somebody to die or planning for somebody to be really sick. We want to have conversations about retiring and sitting on a beach and sending our kids to college and fun things like that. But these are equally important. And so how, in the work that you're doing, how do you get advisors ready? Maybe share, without naming names of advisors, but maybe just a quick case study of some sort on how you've moved an advisor from maybe not being literate or to becoming more literate.
Okay, excellent. So I work usually with training teams or training a larger group, and where we always start is getting comfortable with even saying these words. We always go back to fundamentals. Even the professional ball players of the world always go back to fundamentals. And actually scripting and saying things as doing role play. Okay. Here's the number one thing where people get stuck and we work on is when I'm going to have this conversation with my client, I'm going to pretend it's my family. And that's a very difficult ask because we immediately go, what if this happened to my family? Right. And so we talk about all of those fears up front. Let's get that out of the way. Let's get that on the table. Then we go to fundamentals of what would you say? What should you not say? And we practice that. From there, we go into role-playing, questions that extend the conversation, opportunities, like when a death happens or a loss happens, a series of firsts come up. What do you say on the phone call? What do you say at the service? What do you write in the empathy card? What do you do at the first office visit? And we basically plan out everything we're going to say and practice it. Because it can't be fluent and authentic if we haven't practiced. And so there's key things that you should say, you know, and I think everybody can relate to, oh my gosh, I waited too long. I should have called last week, or I should have written a card last week, and so we do nothing. And it doesn't matter. It's never too late. But when a client is experiencing loss, you call them. They probably won't pick up, but you leave a message. They need to hear your voice. You need to say something better than I'm sorry or sorry for your loss. Because we've been trained and our culture always goes to that. Mm-hmm. I challenge you to look on anything on social media and you'll see sorry for your loss, sorry for your loss. And that's all we see. But how about, you know, hi, Dave, I'm saddened to hear about your wife, Jane. She lit up the office whenever she came in. Her wit was outstanding and I miss her already. That sounds so much more authentic. And so we teach clients to say the person's name, okay? Mention something that they're remembered by, okay? We want to celebrate their life, not their death. Mm-hmm. We mirror the death terms, okay? When you're meeting with a client and they say, well, my husband passed, or I lost my husband. You want to mirror lost and past. That's what their comfort level, okay? They're not ready to hear death died. Mm-hmm. And so we learn a lot of these tips in my workshops that engage clients, because when we're talking about empathy, it's misguided sometimes in our culture. We think we have to put ourselves in their shoes. Those shoes don't fit, okay? We want to connect in the emotions, not the context. Mm-hmm. People can't associate with widowhood unless they've experienced it. I can't associate with divorce unless I've experienced it. But I can associate, my advisor, an advisor and a client can associate in feelings of overwhelm, lost, fear, uncertainty. And so we start having the conversations and we extract emotions out of this conversation. And that's your connector. That's where the conversation is.
So you're concentrating on empathy rather than compassion.
Empathy rather than sympathy. Sympathy is I feel sorry for you.
Right.
Empathy is I feel with you. Compassion is I feel with you and I'm here to help. So compassion is the highest level. Okay. And in order to understand a loss, it's very important that we learn as people, as advisors, to show empathy without unconscious bias. And what that means is somewhere we start saying things to people because we are trying to quantify the death. I mean, this is really sad stuff. And so we say, well, we quantify the age. Well, at least they lived a long life, meaning somebody dying 90 versus 45 is more important. It's not more important to your client sitting in front of you.
Right.
You know, what matters is their person. Or we start to say, well, at least it was your aunt, not your mother. Well, we don't know that relationship. So we start quantifying relationships as being deemed more valuable to mourn. Or the type of death, died in their sleep of natural causes versus died of suicide. And somewhere in our brain, we think one is worse or better than the other. And so we start to make these statements that disenfranchises somebody's right to grieve.
Right.
And so we go over a lot of those statements of what not to say. It's God's plan. At least they didn't have to suffer any longer. You'll get back out there, as if, we're culturally trained to cheer grief up because we want it to go away. It's too uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I know you've covered a lot of them just in the last, couple of minutes, but you have a great list of what to say and what not to say. And I think that, and some of that gets to the awkwardness, right? People say things that maybe they haven't thought through, or that maybe they've heard others say in the past, but they're not necessarily the right things to say. And so I think, when I think about your coaching, even on a really simple level, just having that sort of, hey, what to say, what not to say, as an advisor, I think is really important. And can you be effective in helping someone grieve? I did put together some client testimonials for a consulting client of mine who's a local RIA a few weeks back, and one of the testimonials was from a woman who was a widow as of about 10 years ago. And she talked exactly what you were saying about compassion. And she talked about the fact that her husband kind of had the keys to all of this financial stuff. She didn't know anything. And she talked about this advisor and how he, held her hand and sort of step by step, not all at once, but sort of step by step took her through all of this. And just to hear her talk about it all these years later, it really was a great effort by the advisor to get her comfortable with how he could help, even though they hadn't had a relationship like the advisor had with her husband.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, Kathi, before with our co-presenting, but I think as financial professionals, we're sort of hardwired to jump at the, I have to contact the custodian, I have to get the death certificate straightened out, all of the sort of the financial logistics. But I think what you said there, Mark, about, that woman's feedback was, it was sort of a step-by-step process. It wasn't just, drinking from a fire hose at what is essentially the worst time of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love hearing that. And I love people when they step up and really help. And it's not a rushed thing. Very few decisions need to be made in the first year. And yes, there's organization things, there's forms to fill out, there's choices to think about, there's things to prioritize. But I hear a lot of like urgent, triage, all of these words, those are very frightening as a griever. And, the name of my program is PACE, because I want the advisor to pace and be a decision partner with the widow. And PACE stands for preparation, action, communication, and empowerment. And not only when you walk people through this, you become a better advisor, but you become a better human, And to the core, I believe advisors are there to help, and they want to create influence and impact that lasts well beyond the person in front of them. And so I think it's such an opportunity of a skill set to learn. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is learnable tools that we can learn to help our clients.
And this can be applied in non-death situations, right?
So many non-death situations. I mean, death doesn't have a monopoly on grief. Okay. Loss is loss. And the only loss that matters is their loss when it's your client. Mm. And it could be a divorce, a separation, an empty nest, difficult life transitions, moving out of a home, a future they hadn't planned on, caregiving decisions, infertility, many things that we all will at some point experience, or you will have clients that are experiencing. And they want resources. They want to be acknowledged. Many advisors that I work with will say, I got my clients to retirement and they have all of this money, but they are very disenchanted with retirement. And our go-to is, but look at all this money you have, and you can do this, and you can take these trips, and we're trying to, cheer them up, when really they want to be acknowledged. Mm-hmm. This is a very different transition than they thought. All of their friends are now working, and they're alone at home. Their schedule is wide open, so they don't have any regimented thing. Their social circle has changed. They don't feel the sense of purpose they had prior. And so advisors can really, let's talk about this. Rather than you'll do okay and you have all of this, how about we invite this conversation? Right. Get them to talk more, get them to trust more. Because here's the thing. People come to you for one reason. And it's usually the things they think about in financial planning and what money can do. But they will stay with you when you can be there in the most difficult times.
Well said.
Great
point. Hey, Kathi, in the couple minutes we have left, there's we got, and one of them is, how do people get in touch with you? How would they work with you? How would they do that?
The best way to get a hold of me is email me, Kathi at kathybalasek.com, or they can go to my website, kathybalasek.com. Those are the best two ways. The way I work with people is advisor training. I love to train teams. We can train online. We can train in person. You can have me at your next event. I can do breakout sessions there. I do group coaching on if you want to specialize in widowhood. And I have my next round is in March. So those are the main ways. Team coaching, I don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching, just because I'm still teaching at the university, and I want to optimize my time and get in front of teams. So those are how I work. Awesome.
I love it. And Cheryl, we have a question, though we think of most of our viewers on this webcast as being really knowledgeable about Income Conductor, but there is a question here about Income Conductor. Tell me more about it, and how would I get started with Income Conductor?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, incomeconductor.com, and schedule a demo, but we are really laser focused on planning for retirement and managing that plan throughout retirement. And that's where a lot of what Kathi does comes into play, as I mentioned, really planning for that surviving spouse and setting a plan up that serves the couple as well as the person who, could spend 10, 15 years as a survivor after the death of a spouse and all of the challenges they face. So, what Kathi and I really come together is that planning is an art. There's the science, there's the calculations, but then there's also the client persona, there's the emotions, there's the culture of connectivity with your client, communication. So I think, one of the things our software does very well is kind of bringing those worlds together and setting up those conversations. And what Kathi does so well is giving you the tools to excel at that. So
awesome. Thank you for the questions.
So we are past the half hour. I just want to say what a delight it's been, Kathi, to have you on and have you shared, just the tip of the iceberg of the value you bring to financial professionals, to advisors. And Kathi was, kind enough to share a PDF, which is sort of a list of things to say and things not to say. So we'll be sharing that with our attendees. Be on the lookout for an email with a recording of this session with the PDF inserted in the email. So thank you so much, Mark, and thank you so much, Kathi.
Thank you, Cheryl and Mark. I'm honored, and I just wish you all such joy and success.
Thank you, Kathi.
All right, and everybody have a great day. Stay warm.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Cheryl.
Bye.